This Fed Gov Today program is sponsored by EY. On this edition of Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose, the Transportation Department's IT consolidation goes into overdrive, going back to the basics to save agency money and a quantum shift in the security clearance process. Welcome to Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose. OneDOT IT is the goal for the Transportation Department's Chief Information Officer. He lists processes, people, and products as part of the path to get to that goal. Pavan Pidugu is the CIO at DOT. Pavan, welcome. It's great to see you again. Thanks for joining me today. What's your vision for OneDOT IT? What are the concepts behind it?
First, Francis, thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to see you again. OneDOT IT, it's a grand vision of trying to streamline the processes, upskill our people, and minimize the technology landscape that we have to manage. Right? It's more about serving the citizens with a better technology for the day and age we live in than looking at as the primary goal is to save money. Saving money is a byproduct of what we do. So it starts with our people. Our people are located in the subcomponents of the department in smaller chunks, doing repetitive things and redundant things across the department. So OneDOT IT is consolidating all of the people that are in subcomponents into one large IT organization working for the CIO. The second part is we have redundant systems that does the same thing that are built over time for the right reasons back in the day. But now is the day and age to look at what capabilities do we need to offer to people, what capabilities do we have today that are being offered in different manners, and unify them into a common process, common practice, so any citizen or any entity that's needing to interact with DOT gets the same unified digital experience. And then the third in that process is simplification of our IT infrastructure, architecture, and assets that we manage. In that process, we save a lot of money. For our people, they're part of larger organizations, so they get a lot of avenues to grow themselves professionally and meet their professional and personal goals. When you're in a small organization that has 5 IT people, you have to almost wait for somebody to retire over a decade later to grow into that position. But when you are a part of a larger organization that's serving the entire Department of Transportation, I could get excited working on a highway project today and go on to something else tomorrow on different technologies, on different roles. It brings a much more larger enterprise experience for people so we can grow from within. I would rather have people move around within the organization than lose them to some other organization outside because they don't see us as a long-term workplace.
On redundant systems, you said recently you have 14 grant systems at DOT as one example you gave, and you don't have 14 bureaus. So you have more examples of that technology than you have of organizations to use it. How are you going around and inventorying what you have so you know what your baseline is to know what you can consolidate?
Great question. Again, it's every day is a new learning for the past couple of months as we're trying to understand what our landscape is. Obviously we know what we have, but we don't know how they're architected, what they have been done, because some of these go 10, 15 years ago they were built, and we don't have good documentation. The vendors that built, we didn't take good care of handoffs when they left the organizations, etc. So we're doing a lot of reverse engineering to identify what is the construct behind these systems. Grants is a great example. Inspections is another example. Again, when you think of us wanting to do an inspection, I shared last time when we spoke, in motor carriers, for a simple truck inspection, the inspector had to log into 8 different applications. Similarly, we have pipeline inspection done railways inspection that's done in FRA. A lot of other agencies do similar capabilities, but the systems are different also, right? So one way to look at it is when you build a product, it allows people to have different capabilities. So think about it as, I'm watching a movie on Netflix. I'm always on the road, and I may want to watch a movie when I'm not connected and flying in the air. And my son is not getting on plane that often, and he may wants to watch some movies over the weekend or kids shows over the weekend. So there is like a different expectation in terms of how we're going to use the same product, right? So similarly, for our inspection applications, when we apply that product mindset into those, we're looking at, okay, what capabilities, what functionality is required within the same construct of a single tangible asset, and grow it over time. So our IT infrastructure that we have to maintain and manage over a long run becomes smaller and smaller with more capabilities than what we have today.
Is that concept the reason why you substitute the word products instead of saying people process technology, that you think about people process products? Is that the reason why?
That is absolutely one way to look at it, right? Technology is the construct of how it is made. You can use any technology to deliver the same tangible asset. So we call it product. Again, I come from retail background, so you're always used to the terminology in that. But also, product is the evolution of application and software development. It's the common industry practice. If you look at any technology, large technology organizations, they're building products, which is a tangible thing people touch and use to do an activity on it. In grocery products, you use them for some part in your life, whether cooking or having a beverage or whatnot. But in digital product, these days, we do all of our jobs through those technology products.
Mm-hmm. You used a couple of terms there, referred to a couple of your experiences. You were at a bureau of the Transportation Department before you became the agency CIO. You were at Walmart before you came into the federal government. How have both of those experiences informed the way that you've approached the job of CIO of the full department?
So the experience at Walmart and retail in general helped me to build large-scale transformations in a fast pace, in a shorter time-driven environments. The entry into motor carriers helped me to understand the government ways of working or limitations of certain things in the government to shape me as a leader to still not let go of my fast-paced technology transformations in a government construct. So I'm positioned really well to come in to the Department of Transportation CIO role because I know a little bit more than other CIOs that are joining in the administration about their entire department. Mm-hmm. So that helped me to hit the ground running mm-hmm. from day one. I actually walked in with a vision onto the job on day one. It took about a couple of weeks to understand the new leaders in the administration that I'm going to be working with, understand what their priorities are, how IT can support their vision, right? These days, anything you have to bring efficiencies, technology plays a major role. So I wanted to, leverage how I can be of support to meet the Secretary's vision and goals. End of the day, I work at the pleasure of the Secretary, and my job is to ensure that he and his leadership team is supported and given the right tools at the right time so they're not slowed down or bogged down because of the bureaucratic processes in building tech in the government space.
Pavan, it's great to have you on the show. Thanks very much for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Francis. It's my pleasure.
You can read more about consolidation at DOT on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, going back to the basics to save agency money. Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose. We'll be back in a moment.
needs to be the focus, where we can leverage AI, where we can bring in AI to look at analytics and supporting analytics in a more robust method and manner than we do today. There are a lot of different things from a technology standpoint that I think once we get the opinion, we'll be able to invest more heavily into that and focus on that. I think another thing that we need to really strongly consider is looking at the Rolodex of policies, procedures, regulations. I think we could pour some acid on some of those documents and see what we need and what fits in an environment of today versus what we were living in the legacy environment.
See what survives after a little bit of a testing by fire.
But I think it's both. I do think that tone starts at the top. The more leaders emphasize, I want fewer big, massive integration contracts that take years to award and years to execute, the more that leaders sort of say, I'm going to lean forward, I'm going to take a little bit of risk here. I mean, you can take calculated risks. You have to calculate them, but you take calculated risks. But the more that I think leaders convey that tone, the more that we'll see people willing to step out a little bit out of their comfort zone and embrace some of those more innovative approaches.
Welcome back. The theory of IT asset management's making a comeback across the federal government. Leaders at agencies including the Justice Department, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and others cite ITAM as one way to know what they already have to save money several different ways. Jeff Bristow is Government and Public Sector Technology Leader at EY. Jeff, welcome. It's great to have you on the show. This focus on cost reduction, saving money, what is that doing? How is that impacting the way agencies are thinking about their IT or the way that they should be thinking about IT?
First, thanks for having me. It's great to see you again, Francis. It's a great question, and I think the short answer is they're not mutually exclusive. There doesn't have to be a trade-off. So you can save money. If you're doing it the right way, when you're approaching modernization, you will save money, and at the same time, you can improve outcomes for the constituents of any agency that we support. So I think it's, in my mind, it's about fundamentally looking at it as not just a cost-saving measure, but why? What are you trying to achieve at the same time? Mm-hmm. They can go hand in hand. They should go hand in hand. If you're thoughtful about it, that's just the way it will work.
Is mission delivery then the first thing to think about? Cost savings becomes a residual benefit, or is it strategically, is it a different thing?
I think that for the most part, you want to always focus on the mission. You want to understand. I think the strategic vision for everyone I've talked to from an agency, it's all about what can we do to maximize the utility to the constituents. So that starts with the mission. But the enabling IT capabilities that support those people, the individuals who work for the government, a lot of times they're older. Some of the legacy applications are a bit outdated. They're challenging to use. You think about how many people are retiring. A lot of the systems that these they were built around a population that is aging out. They're retiring, and now there are new expectations with the new generation, the next generation of labor who's going to support those agencies. So it's really important to understand what do they want, what do you want to do, what is the mission you're trying to achieve, and is there a more effective way to do it? Mm-hmm. Most of the time, I've seen that the more effective ways to do it also do cost less. They cost less to maintain. They cost less to change. As missions evolve, it ends up being a much more, I'd say, efficient, flexible solution for government agencies.
It sounds like the same idea as agencies should be taking, as people advise agencies to take toward AI. You don't go buy AI. Correct. You find a mission application for which it's appropriate. It doesn't sound like you're encouraging people to figure out a way to save some money. You're figuring out a way to deliver on mission better, and the residual effect will be the cost saving. Absolutely. Am I reading it right?
Absolutely. And I think one of the misnomers or the miss is that it takes a long time to realize those cost savings. If you do it thoughtfully, if you're deliberate about it, you can achieve those savings in a very short amount of time. You're not talking about years to get to that speed to value. But at the same time, the systems that you're building, if you think about the legacy applications that you're going to modernize, you can achieve those benefits. The return on investment can happen in months, not years. And to your point, it is going to streamline the tech stack that they have, which is going to make it more cost effective, less people actually focusing on maintaining the systems that you're using to support the mission.
A lot of folks have focused on what they refer to as the low-hanging fruit, and a lot of agencies say, well, we've already got that.
Yep.
Now we're getting into the really difficult legacy systems, or the things that are really important that we've been kind of afraid to touch. Nobody will say they were afraid to touch it, but they've been afraid to touch it. What's the implication of that for trying to think about modernizing a stack?
Yes, that happens a lot, and I think there is that resistance. There's already been a lot of investment made in a solution for an agency. I think the most important question to ask is why does it exist? Why are people using it? What are people using it for? If you can crack that, then you can maybe unlock some potential for there's a new solution that can do the same thing with a better user experience, more efficiently. And still, so you're going to achieve that improved mission outcomes, but at the same time, it's going to cost you less, maybe even upfront, but certainly over the life of that solution.
We have about 30 seconds left. Has the willingness of agencies to accept commercial solutions, or mostly commercial solutions, helped with what you just described, Jeff?
Absolutely. I think that now the government is looking towards some of the other sectors that maybe have already faced some of the challenges. They've already cracked the code on user experience. They've already cracked the code on how to increase automation, leverage things like AI. So exporting that and those lessons learned into the government, I think, is something that agencies are much more receptive to. And I think it's going to be ultimately very beneficial, not only to the agencies, but to the constituents.
Very quick final thought. What sectors should agencies look at for those kinds of ideas and best practices?
Great question. There's a lot from retail, I'd say financial services, some of the ones that deal with the scale that we're talking about that's really uncommon outside of the federal government. I'd say those are the two sectors that I would focus on most.
Jeff, it's great to have you on the program. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
You can read more about saving money on IT on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, a quantum shift in the security clearance process. Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose continues in just a moment.
But I think it's both. I do think that tone starts at the top. The more leaders emphasize, I want fewer big, massive integration contracts that take years to award and years to execute, the more that leaders sort of say, I'm going to lean forward. I'm going to take a little bit of risk here. I mean, you can take calculated risks. You have to calculate them, but you take calculated risks. But the more that I think leaders convey that tone, the more that we'll see people willing to step out a little bit out of their comfort zone and embrace some of those more innovative approaches.
Welcome back. The Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency says it'll use artificial intelligence and structured professional judgment tools for insider threat detection. DCSA says the tools will give the agency information about insider threats earlier. David Cattler's the outgoing director of DCSA. At Clearance Jobs Connect 2025, he tells FedGov Today's George Jackson what insider threats exist today.
So there's a lot of old challenges and there are some new challenges in that. I think one thing is that we all have to appreciate that there's no silver bullet. There's no magical solution to really understand who is going to go bad and who has bad intent and who's going to translate that intent into action. There are some indicators, there are some typical models that we tend to see. And remember that insider threats aren't all potential violent actors. They could be people that speak inappropriately to the media. They could be people that are going to engage in espionage. They could be people that intend to engage in sabotage or other acts that violate trust and can cause some real damage in the system. So the insider threat community has quite a challenge on its hands, because it's not just that you're talking about millions of people that they have to provide surveillance over and that monitoring. It's also that they have to deal with this range of behaviors, and it has to be done fairly and appropriately. We also don't want to be so intrusive that we're violating people's rights that we're acquiring the wrong information, that we're taking actions against the wrong people. But we want to try to identify people that have the intent and plan to translate that intent into action as early as possible, so that if, they are going to engage in a violent act, we avoid that altogether, and that we can give that person that we've already established trust with, we care about, right? We want to make sure that they also have an opportunity for us to help them and have that, whatever it is, again, whatever that bad behavior is, be avoided altogether.
One of my favorite parts of your bio, at least in the list of many responsibilities that you hold in this position, is the phrase strategic transformation. It must be incredibly challenging, especially at this time where artificial intelligence, emerging technologies are just exploding. Talk about their role, possibly their future role in the agency's work.
Yeah, so look, one thing I'd say is that it is actually a great joy of being a senior executive in government service, is that you have the thing that you work on where you're supposed to have deep expertise and this great network and set of relationships. And you also have some constancies as a senior executive. And one of them for me, in fact, is this idea that you can lead and be called in to work on transformative efforts. And that's been, frankly, it's one of the things I've enjoyed the most over the course of my career. I'd encourage people to consider that technology is always adapting. The way we do work is correspondingly changing. So I'm not overly in love with or overly invested in any bit of technology. What I try to focus on and have encouraged my agency to consider is the why of what we do. If you understand why security is important, the security equals trust. You're in the trust business. If AI helps you get there, then that's great. If it doesn't, you don't use it. There's some other technology that comes in, great. Consider it, adopt it if it makes good sense. But I think the thing for AI, as I just said in my speech, it's really important for us to remember is that the decisions that an agency like DCSA can take will deeply affect individual Americans and businesses in ways that are really, really profound. If DCSA determines that the government should not move into a trust relationship with you on an individual basis, for example, you don't get that security clearance. Can you work? Can you support your family or not? So it's incredibly important that we get it right. The same for a company when we look at a company's trustworthiness to have a facility clearance or to have employees that could have security clearances on an individual basis. We have to get that right. And I think that the way we look at it, it's important for our fellow American citizens to appreciate that we put great weight on being responsible stewards to protect their data, to use it only for the appropriate purposes, and to make the wisest decisions possible to determine whether that trust basis should be established. So when we apply AI, for example, it's to deal with large volumes of information, to try to make that more manageable, issue alerts, find anomalies, determine areas to focus. But we've made a really strong argument that we should not allow the computer, we should not allow AI to be able to take that fundamentally human decision about the trust question.
I'm going to ask a long-winded question here, Director, but it's just because I want to give our audience a little bit of context. You know, as we tape this, you're on the cusp of a big strategic transformation of your own, retirement from federal service after a long, distinguished career. The public sector media marketplace has credited you with speeding up the background check process, with really establishing much closer ties with the DIB, the Defense Industrial Base. Have you had time to think about your legacy? I mean, you just put out this strategic plan in March. It's a 5-year vision. Like, what's your legacy and what would you like your successor, the 12,000 plus workforce that report into you currently, what are the sort of lessons learned and legacy that you want to impart them with now?
Well, thanks. But look, I think it's important to say right up front that directors work in different ways than the workforce does. All of those things that you cited are actually things that are team wins, I think, for my agency. With nearly 15,500 staff, they do the work. They are the ones that are on the front line interacting with people for background checks and other things. They're doing those industrial security audits. working in a CI community, et cetera, et cetera. What I've tried to do is to help set the conditions for them, to make sure that they have what they need to protect them, the agency, the mission, so that they have the space necessary to do that really important work, to set them free to do it in ways that we agree are better than the old ways. If that's the case, I mean, we've looked across a lot of things to be able to make those decisions. It's made us better. It's made us faster. It's made us better stewards of the taxpayer's dollar. Be sure that they're getting that value. So what I'd say in terms of where do I feel like I've made my mark? Well, one thing is to create those conditions. Second is to set that workforce free, to make sure that they know if you have a better way of doing business, feel free to say so. Management's, we're going to welcome that. I'm going to take a hard look at it. If it comes to me, we're going to give you what you need to move out. We're going to try it. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, we'll adjust from there, because that's the way we get better. My interaction with industry, though, is fundamentally to make the case clear to them that we're on the same team. So 364 days of the year, yeah, we're here to be sure that you comply. We have this great regulatory and statutory authority to be sure that you follow these rules. But the reality of it is that we're working with you because we know we have a common why. We all care about the national security of the United States, about preserving and extending the nation's competitive edge, whether it's economic or military. I mean, as I say, as a DOD person. But there's one day a year maybe where we're going to come out and we're going to turn our hat around and we're going to call balls and strikes to then measure that compliance and check that progress. But all of the other days of the year, you can call us anytime. We're happy to give you advice and training, hear your complaints, hear your feedback about where things are working well, and to work iteratively with each other to do the things, again, to that common why that are so important to the nation and the nation's security.
The outgoing director of DCSA, David Cattler. You can read more about the insider threat landscape on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. FedGov Today continues in just a moment.
I think efforts in both the DoD and the federal government really are making very clear we need to make things faster, we need to make things better, we need to do it, and we need to get it out in front of people rapidly. I mean, the executive order yesterday signed by the president for AI, I think, kind of sums up the need for moving.
Mm-hmm. FedGov Today TV returns next Sunday morning at 10:30. I'm Francis Rose. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you then. Have a great week.